retailers as our collaborators, also across shared suppliers that we have programs that help subsidize those costs. So we launched a fund, the climate fund, that we have other big partners that are contributing to the goal of capital that is the programmatic and grant making process towards unlocking and activating solutions that are verified as CO2 scale the requirement of capital. So just this year, we announced that our strategy is to leverage that 275 that would be supplier engagement. They're up there. I don't know, trade debt financing. That's basically who we are and what we're doing.
Now let's go to the evidence.
Good, and maybe I should, represent my name, so let me, and as you know, as the fashion retailer, if we want to reduce our scope 3 emission, that means that our suppliers need to reduce their emissions. And let me go back a second. That green investment is a function that was introduced within HG Group not so long ago. And our purpose is to see to that we have an investment strategy that makes us reach our sustainability. Myself come from a financial controlling and business operations background, and I've been CEO for a German entity and also Southern part of Australia, and in between I also work in business now. And why I'm saying this? Yes, because to reach net zero and work with that is in one way you need to have a business mindset. Is quite a lot of similarities to startup, because we need to find new ways of doing this. We need to find new ways of finance it, and we also at the same time need to see how we deal risk. And one very important part, we need to see the business value, because it's also when you start up, what is the value of this new business, and this is what we need to do as well. And that is also my within my role to see to that the climate activities that we have to try to define what business value.
And then power, so heat, global carbon technical renewable solutions platform.
DC is a global merchant and processor of high commodities. But it's in terms of is and see ourselves as a value chain manager in a sense, because we source, we process, we store, we deliver the goods, the right good at the right moment. Quite a unique position, I would say, in the value chain. Making the bridge between growers on the side, and especially players in the chain. The LDC actually established a German solution platform 3 years ago now with a dedicated climate-related aspects, and that includes decarbonization of the industries in our group, and all the different business units trying to identify emissions in the various value chains, many value chains that and as well as also engaging what we're covering projects and engaging. We have an ambitious scope 1 and 2 targets at this point, which is an industrial program. We don't have yet a scope 3 target, although that you could know are scope 3 related stream. So we're still in the process of targets. This is the established on time. We committed to the agricultural sector 1.5 degree roadmap, which calls for target next year. And so that's.
Thank you. So also please get your questions ready. Please. Now let's go to some of the conversation, start the conversation. Lewis, so we know that you have quite a lot of experience in the apparel sector, and also now leading the Apparel Impact Institute. Of course, there are a lot of for us, what we find particularly interesting is the belief of how you empower organizations, small, big organizations to take. So, as a solutions-oriented industry partner, aggregating brands, manufacturers, and industry stakeholders, what do you think are the biggest challenges that the fashion industry needs to drive in collaboration with complex supply chains?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, so I have been working in this sector just for about 10 years, but have been, working in product design and manufacturing, in, the last 15 or so years. And I think what the complexity of this one is not that it's not a vertically supply chain. So it's obviously needs to be done in collaboration, incentivizing the facilities to take on improvements, is a challenge when we're also signaling them to a lot of different programs and initiatives, which is one, I think, from the perspective of a supplier that we may talk to, it's also encouraging them to take on some of these early programs that are going to yield a return on investment and get them sort of their appetite wet for, saying, okay, this is obviously having benefits to lowering our energy bill, our water consumption, we're getting money back, this makes a lot of sense. But now the next phase of what's coming in terms of, getting coal out of on-site, use in boilers, or potentially switching out the material matrix of like what types of materials that we're encouraging them, let alone any new types of thermal heat technologies or dry processing. Like all this is going to take a lot more, I would say, not only convincing, but also incentivizing, like what's in it for them to be able to do this work. And especially as we're in this gap before regulation, so that we're looking at regulation coming down the pipeline, but ultimately, we're in the space where we're trying to get enough proof points of what works that we can actually signal all the markets to these are the technology solutions. These are the winners, so to speak. And as we always say, there's not going to be one winner. It's going to be a suite of solutions. It's going to vary by facility type, vary by product type, vary by region. And so being able to actually take this, this time to create a system whereby we're also evaluating what are those most likely opportunities by facility type and presenting that. So that's a large part of our strategy, is to build a climate solutions portfolio. We just yesterday, the day before, I think, announced our first grantees to that, which are programs that we're funding through our partnerships with the Fashion Climate Fund. We're putting money into initiatives, programs, and there's even some technology solutions in there as well too, both tech and also technology related to farms and related to fertilizer. And so as we're starting to look at, that's just the beginning, like what are those verified solutions? And the other thing I'll say about it is I think the other challenge, and this is where convening is also important, because it's also getting consensus of agreement that's going to help de-risk investment, not only, capacity building for the solutions that need to scale, but also debt financing. Like how do we stabilize all of this in a way that we move forward is going to be ensuring that we're finding things that are also not too early stage. From an AII perspective, there's a lot of initiatives that are out there that are pilot phase, and they're great ideas, and they're getting great prizes and grant dollars. And we want those things to continue to populate and flourish, but they may not be ready for scale phase. And so really focusing in on what is actually proven to remove carbon, where can we start to do that? So I think those are some of the complexities that we're looking at. And from my perspective, it's, creating a sort of center of gravity and then a verification system whereby you can start to evaluate these solutions, across meaningful CO2 emission reduction, but also meaningful investment opportunity. As you said, the valuable business case, that there's value creation for all the players that are in it, from the brand to the supplier to the banks to everyone who's part of getting these technology solutions scale. It has to see business value, just what it is.
And also, can you give us some examples on how this complete challenges actually play out for the Apparel Impact Institute?
some examples of the challenges and how they play out for us. Yeah. So, I mean, I think some of them I kind of articulated, but I think the challenge for us is ensuring that there's good data before we start to put money into them and also put them into our portfolio. I mean, there's, like I mentioned a minute ago, there's a lot of great solutions, and it's not to naysay them, but they just may not have the data yet. They may not be ready. They may not be viable from a performance and function. And, so what we're trying to do, what we are doing is we've created a pretty strict criteria around following the carbon and ensuring that if we don't have the right data, do we think it's viable enough for scalability that we want to invest in helping them to get the data, right? So that we're not just throwing money against ideas, but we're actually leaning in more towards verified. And I think that's changing the conversation with the sector in a way, because it's also making everyone think a little bit more about, like, maybe that we need to think about where we're putting some of even the grant dollars and piloting dollars early phase, like. And again, we need to do all of it, but maybe some of these next generation materials may not be as pressing as thermal heat technologies. If we were really going to race to 2030, get half the carbon out of supply chain, which is what this industry's goal is, like, where do we place our bets? Where do we double down? And yes, we should do all of it, but not every brand has the ability to invest in all of it. And until we also, signal venture capital and debt financing where we're going, then we're kind of staying in pilot phase, I guess. So yeah, that's one of the issues that I think AII grapples with too, and is ensuring that we're not just another noise out there that's looking at good press releases, but we're actually really trying to get carbon out. And the last thing I'll say about that is, like, we're not with $2 billion of unlocking capital and what we can do to identify projects that we can get to scale. We're not gonna remove all the carbon, but what we can be is like that first, that tip of the spear. Like, we want to demonstrate what's workable that markets can replicate. And then even brands that aren't working with us could replicate with their suppliers. The suppliers could learn about and say, we'll take this on. We don't need to work with AII to take this on. It can't all run through us. And so we're just trying to show what meaningful and effective CO2 emission work looks like.
Fantastic. Well, actually, that's a very good point. Now, let me ask you, Rita, also, you mentioned earlier, of course, all your experience in finance and also leading the investment team in H&M. So, also H&M, by the way, has been a long-term partner of BCI, which is also, for me, one of the indications that is very forward-thinking on this type of problems as well. So, we wanted to ask you, from H&M and all the partnerships and investments that you have been establishing in monitoring and reporting, can you share more about how you are approaching scope 3 action and what are the goals that you have over time?
So we have quite ambitious science-based targets, and I would like to start to get back to the business value, because I think the main point for us to work with these targets is to actually, or to really see climate actions as a way to secure the future business value or even increase it. If you don't do that, then it's hard to motivate in investment. And I'll try to exemplify a little bit on what we are doing, how we're going about it. I mean, we can all agree on that the decarbonization that doesn't happen fast enough. We also know that scope 3, that is our supply, scope 1 and 2, and scope 3, direct supply, that's scope 3 emissions. And in order to reduce those emissions, our suppliers, they need to perform a broad range of investments. Now, many of these investments have a very long payback time. If you're going to replace a coal boiler with a biomass boiler, electric boiler, the payoff is up to 15 years to do that. And this means that, and even if, I'm going to look at you now, it's the technology that, and this is the good thing, I come to the collaboration directly, because that is obviously the good thing. that a lot of those technologies can be piloted and scaled and so prepared for investment and take away a little bit of the cost because they are scaled through like AI and the fund. But generally what we need to do is that we need as brand, we need to see to that we take a bit from the cost from the supplier and shorten the payback time, because the change, yeah, at some point it might happen, but if we want it to happen here and now, we need to have so on one hand, you have the long-term investment or long-term payback for climate activities. And on the other hand, you have a financial system that is built on short-term profit expectations. And in such a world, it's very easy that these long-term climate activities, they get totally down prioritized in favor for like day-to-day business activities. And here we have a gap. And we need to bridge that gap. So at H&M, we decided to take a holistic view and said, what is our return on investment? I think that is what everyone needs to bottom. What is the return for us? And the return, that's the emission reduction that we can achieve with those. Then we need to look into what does the emission reduction, what does a ton reduced emission, what does that cost? Because different interventions in different levers will have different costs. And again, as we said, some will be better than others. And we don't know that really yet. We need to try. And we need to, can't also say that we only do those in that level. We need to look into energy efficiency measurements are quite low cost, could even be have a positive payback fairly quickly. Whereas I said other will take longer time. So then we have a cost per ton, but we still don't have the value. Now we need to look what is then the value of this emission. Yeah, for us, the business value, it's the alternative cost. You need to look into what is the financial value of the risk that you want to mitigate with exactly that intervention. And that's easier said than done, maybe. For some points, it could be done fairly. If you look at a risk like let's say carbon border duty, there we know that might come, most likely will come, and there is sort of speculations on to what level that value you can place, and that is what you will mitigate. And of course, everything that is cheaper than that is a positive thing. So this is how we work. But now we have we then have, because you asked also what is our goals and what do we do with that. So now we have that as the base. I continue. Or you have to stop me if not. The bridge in this case is a separated budget. So it can't be touched for anything else. It needs to be this kind of intervention. And one of the projects where a lot of the budget has come to now, it's what we have been doing is to have a program where suppliers can apply for funding for their decarbonization or energy efficiency projects. And it went live about a year ago. We are happy with the results, but it's very clear that it's not enough. Because even if we are a large retailer, we only have a small share of the production at each supplier, which means we share supply with other brands, and so it would be so much more efficient if we collectively could go together and then share the investment as well. We also need to work with financial institutions, because the financial institution will be much better built in that sense, and they have better opportunities to find low cost financial options for the suppliers, and so reduce their investment hurdle. And on the other hand, brands can help with that. Their role could be to connect banks with the suppliers to find the investment, but it could also be that in one way or another, de-risk this loan in placing a collateral as a guarantee, and so make possible so the bank can give a low cost loan. And we, as the next step, which you also asked how want you to know what we think about how we want to reach our goals. Hopefully, we will be able to do this, find this collaboration and go together with brands. We have, together with Consultancy Guidehouse and TBS Bank, we're working on such a program where we, together with brands that we share supplies, could go together and do give both financial and technical support. And the hope is that once we are up and running and can show results, that will pave way for other investors, if it's donors or philanthropic or other investment to also be part in the program.
That's it. Now, what about the future? So, how does HNF envision measuring and verification to ensure credible climate impacts?
And here is the trick again. Collaboration. Without collaboration, we can't. And the other thing is, as I said, the textile industry is based on or working like in the way that, as you know as well, that the supplier has many customers, and the share for each and every one could be as low as under 5%. And that means that anytime we go in and would perform an investment with a supplier or give a loan, we can only account for our share of those emission reduction, even if we finance the total. So that means that the rest of the brands, if you would put it like that, would be sort of free riding on that. And in the end, that's not financially viable. So to actually, and also if you want to collaborate and collectively go together with 3 or 4 brands, they will say the same. They want to see a result for the money, because if you want someone to invest, you will also have to make it possible for this person to get a return on investment of said investment. And in this case, the return on investment, that's the emission reductions. And then we have the value of those, but it's the reductions that we need to see to that it's possible, and we need accounting guidelines that makes it possible for the investor in this end to account for that share.
Thank you very much, Ulrika. So now with my wrap, and what is interesting is that we have multiple perspectives here, right? So LTC is a world leader in cotton trading globally. So I think that it's also very impactful, the actions that you have in the value chain. So for us, we would like to ask you today if you can give me or give us some examples of the challenges in stock reactions that we find today, both upstream and downstream.
Maybe before that, I mean, it's very, very interesting to hear your views about what must be done in terms of reducing emissions or suppliers and where most of the emissions happen in the cotton, in apparel value chain, which is more in the middle of the value chain. So we do also have a scope 1 and 2. We process a lot of commodities. We don't process that much cotton. We do gene a little bit, but we gene cotton. Most of our processing is we respect to others, but we have exactly the same sort of reasoning, right? That you just described. So very, very interesting to hear this. When it comes to cotton, indeed, we are tier 4, so we sit really upstream, just after the growers and the ginners, and that's if I'm wrong, but that's probably maybe 20% of the capital, more or less. So we have a role to play. I mean, the 20% as of 20% is let's say material extraction, and then cotton is get a share of that. But there's a role to play for a company like us in reducing emission value chains upstream, working basically with growers for regional programs. And so we are conscious from of the role we can play. We have established networks upstream that can be quite powerful to scale up because these networks are based on trust. And so if something is proven to be working, then eventually we can use that these networks and relationships to getting that. But then there's of course a challenge. Because it's based on trust. We have to be quite thoughtful about what we implement, and of course think twice, be sure about the outcome of whatever intervention we would have to put working with growers. That one aspect. When it comes to business value and the need of an incentive to act and invest in interventions within the value chain, I think the challenge we have and the need we have is a better understanding of the value actually that our customers downstream give to a lower carbon commodity, right? We need to see these signals, be comfortable and be confident that we can then eventually invest because then there's a lot of if we think about traceability requirements, what needs to be put in place, but actually certification that will have to ensure the credibility and reassurance that is needed to transfer claims downstream. I mean, we need to be comfortable that there will be a sharing of the costs involved in this process. So that's something that is of course needed on that side. There's quite many challenges. I know we can list some of them, but of course one of them is the fact that we need to be. I mean, there's sort of disconnect between the reporting and eventually accounting for reporting or for inventory and accounting for intervention, right? And so there's a need for clear guidance on how we can claim whatever outcome we get from intervention as part of the reporting on one hand, and also guidance on how we can transfer this claims further down the chain to our customers. Other challenges are related to let's say still uncertainty around the outcome of some of the interventions we can implement around regional. There is uncertainty around the outcome, and so more information about involved potential of these different approaches is something that quite useful to have. And probably when it is, I would say clearer downstream, when it comes to energy transition, for example, it's more challenging when it comes to regional, that's for emissions. If we think about removals, potentially, organic carbon is something that you can enhance through regional activities. Then here, I think there's really a need for a pragmatic approach to removals and the issue of demands. If we transfer, claims around the removals that we answer to these interventions, we need to have some. We need to be reassured that it's not going to be questioned, down the line. So, pragmatism calls for some middle ground there in terms of we cannot monitor things for a year, of course. Right, so there's a need for some solution there. But that's just about how we can remove them. Something. What else could I say? Yes. Something that is crucial and key for our business is the optionality or the flexibility when it comes to sourcing. And so concept like the sourcing region or the supply chain and the mass balance. And this is really key for us for this to be endorsed as part of reporting frameworks. Because otherwise there's going to be a major barrier in terms of us going ahead and investing. If 3 years down the road we don't work with the same growers, therefore we don't. That's another key aspect of the. There are other challenges, but they're also important.
And there is another question because earlier today we talked about co-training and also this lab. And I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what do we need to make this co-training in the tiers, across the tiers in the value chain in the apparel sector, or desirable to activate these partnerships in the different tiers?
I mean, to me, it's almost. I mean, you say to make them desirable, but to me, it's almost a must. Right? I mean, I think we agree that we cannot, on our own solve the scope 3. There's a need for collaboration in nature, and so co-training comes right away into play. And whether Whether it's because there's co-investment upstream, so they go together and invest together in activities, or whether we go ahead and invest, but then with the certainty that eventually we can transfer whatever outcomes downstream, with respect to what I mentioned for some premium, so that we can recoup on the investment. So to me, it's actually a must to actually find mechanisms that allow for co-claiming in a robust and credible way.
And do you think market-based mechanisms can be a feasible solution?
They can. I mean, I was talking about optionality, flexibility, and that, market-based mechanisms allow for that. So if you generate through verification certification schemes, such as what is being proposed by President you can generate in 5 units, then you know that if you don't necessarily need for yourself in terms of claiming the full amount of impact is generated, you can go and look for other users potentially that it's in the same value chain, and that gives us flexibility, right? So and that's one of the mechanisms to co-invest in. So clearly there's a role to play there.
Thank you. So also reflecting a little bit, because our topic is here for the summit is collaborations, and this is a question I want to launch for you three. What do we need to have the bigger room for this conversation? Right? Because this is scope 3 in the apparel sector. We want to grow this community to have this big conversation to actually face through all the challenges. So what do we need for that to activate these partnerships to have people interested on this?
I think it needs to be easy to correct it, but it can't be too complicated. I think it needs almost like a IKEA solution clicking. No, seriously, but and this is what I think is genius with climate solution portfolio, was like we make it easy. There are skilled people looking into what kind of interventions or what kind of technology could be piloted or even only vetted, but that have like a solution portfolio where you can choose what you should do. If we then could go together and have the like what we are thinking, an investment cohort where that I know with whom I share supplier. If we can go together, that we have third party that helps with energy efficiency audits within this supplier, can give us example of, we think that this is for the supplier in that case. These are the investments that you should do in order to reduce energy demand and also replace fossil fuel. It will cost you 3 million. And then the next step is that the brand, okay, we share that. And then we have an accounting guideline that makes it possible for us to actually account for exactly what we put in as investment. And, I don't know, I mean, this needs obviously to be marketed in a way. It's a program that you should then be able to, as a brand, say, yeah, I want to be part of that. But I don't know really who should market it. You?
No, believe me, we're doing our best.
Yes.
So we're trying to do our
What do you think?
I think, well, to come back to the complexity is a barrier. I mean, I can see myself advocating for action and talking with colleagues from the various business units and platforms, trying to socialize the idea, explain about the mechanism. Then they look at it with big eyes and so trying to just to comprehend all that is not an easy one. And then so once you pass that, then there's the actual implement. Then you have to face certification, which is necessary, of course, to provide the assurance. But I guess there's a right middle there between sufficiently or sufficient assurance, but then maintaining the sort of operational efficiency. So in terms of timeline, the certification should have a reasonable timeline. And then we're talking about climate, but then goes downstream. There's also, I mean, there's all other criteria, right? So biodiversity, water, and
Regenerative.
and then you start stacking and filing different certifications, and that's where it becomes very, very time consuming, very, very complex. and quite costly. And so anything that can be done to streamline the certification process, I think is welcome, in terms of planning, in terms of, like it gets complex for people to try to. I think that's a message if you want to scale it eventually, right? Otherwise, we'll stay within the pilot phase. Thank you.
Well said. Now, since this is a very cozy home, we have the opportunity to have some questions from the audience. Oh, fantastic.
Hi, my name's Bethany. So I run a fund that essentially invests into a few different thematic areas with a large asset manager and an insurer. And we've been exploring, we made some investments into accelerating net zero. And we've looked at, regenerative agriculture and scope 3 shedding for the LPCs of the world. Then we've looked at it more from an industrial perspective for H&M and companies that are more reliant on manufacturing supply chains. And one of the things that for me has struck me from this conversation is that, so we've taken a systems networking approach to all of this where, collaboration and conversation and consortiums are all like easy. It's easy to show up to. Showing into this conversation was very easy for me. If I wanted to get into a contract with any one of you, that's going to take more effort, right? So I think, when it comes down to collaboration, we're ultimately talking about different forms of contracts that we're making with each other.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that takes structuring, it takes legal, it takes money, it takes agreement that we feel bound to. And one of the things that is really, important here, I think, is creating a collective agreement around data, right? Like I work in finance, I rely on data. And without data, I cannot make an investment decision, right? If I'm managing pension money, I'm not going to put pension money, people's pension, into something without any data. And so when I look at what we're facing with scope 3, and I look at, building out a huge data model that would enable us to, by fact, say, this is my tier 4 suppliers because artificial intelligence and claiming who the suppliers are in the different spaces can say, this is my supplier. These are the, I love the math conversation, I talk math all day, but like the math around like how much is actually attributed to that supplier, who else is part of that, is working with that supplier, right? And also importantly, is that supplier willing to come into a contract? Are they willing to say that their hand is raised that, okay, I'll put some money in, or I will share my data, et cetera, by contract. And so I think that I'd love to get your thoughts if you've seen, we're building a platform right now because as an insurer and asset manager, we need to do this for all industries. And so it's impossible to like hire enough consultants. And there's no consultants enough in the world to do this work for us. So it's like, we have to build the technology, otherwise it's impossible. And so I'm curious, like, what data sets or like data are you relying on to actually help you get that visibility that you need to feel that you can actually go to your board and say like, this is legitimate. And it's not because like an organization has said it's good, but there's like real hard data behind it. So we're always adding more data sets to how we're building this out. So I'm just always curious what folks are using.
I can just jump on this because since our money is also coming in to ensure that the companies that are putting money into it are going to get, verified CO2 emission reduction against their, investment, that we would be able to demonstrate that. So we've been tracking the carbon reduction, water savings, electrical savings, chemical management that happens in the facilities we've been working on through our Clean by Design program. And now, traditionally that was tracking it in Excel spreadsheets like everybody else, right? We were getting information from the supplier, from the third party, solution provider, that was the vendor that was going in and doing this work.
And then only you have that data and no one else can access it.
Right, exactly. And so now what we've launched as of also this week, right, is our climate solutions portfolio, which is in data, which is, we mentioned that as the portfolio is also the investment portfolio, but it also underneath it has the actual data that we're capturing from the facilities. And of course, this is just going to be the projects and programs that we're running. But if we start to look at how that can be used as one of the data sets that gets back to an H&M group, we produce a report that we can do with them, and based on, quarterly or annual, or, we can start to run, these are all the facilities that investment is going into supporting, and this is the CO2 reduction that we've seen of that. And then obviously the key is to say what percentage of that actually gets back to us versus the other brands. So, but that's one data set. But then we're, like a lot of us, are using HIG data from worldly
Yeah.
SAC as an indicator, that helps us understand which facilities, we should be looking at as well. But then our data can go back into that data set as well too, to constantly improve it. So being designed to work with the HIG data set to go back and help improve that. All up to the supplier to release that information.
Yeah, exactly.
At this point, like they're subject to release that information back to the brand. But we haven't, so we can aggregate that data, give
Yeah.
aggregated reports back.
And to your question, would the supplier be willing to sign such a contract? Yes, I say that without, we're just speak for, but
We're speaking that.
but we do that already.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we have, we approved, the first half year, we approved 17 projects. And all the suppliers have signed these again, because they get money. In that case, it's from H&M's purse. And of course, we will have to have some sort of agreement with them. This agreement should stipulate what kind of investment, what do we expect, what kind of reduction do they expect? And from that, that's to stipulate what happens if it doesn't render that emission, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those contracts,
Those contracts being more straightforward
Mhm.
because you're getting the money.
Yeah.
When between the brands though, how do you imagine that working out?
that we have as well, and then I wouldn't need to go into detail, but as I said, we are looking into, together with Guidehouse, where we said we as H&M can't do that. We need to have a third party. We are not allowed to know the shares that any other brand has with each supplier. But if you have a third party, that, those agreements, they are set up. But so it does work.
Thank you. Another question from?
A couple, I think, Jack from Levi, I think just on collaboration models and less around, what you guys are in the organizations who are, I think I would love to be the brand, it's like, yes, here's $5 million, I want to be a part of this, and I think, right now, it's a tough time in the economic climate, and so I guess encouraging, like, let's be innovative and thinking about what collaboration models look like. Maybe for not all, just being really, what are those tier structures or what are those things? I think there's a lot of things that brands can bring to the table, even if right at the beginning, it's not actual funding. My questions though, Louis, would love to hear from you on, up to speed on what's happening, private sector funding, et cetera, but like, how have those conversations been going with debt finance and like, what's some of the response there in the philanthropy space? Like, what are you hearing? How are they receiving that? And then I know we're focused on net zero, but Mark, since you sit at that kind of tier 4 intersection with like the EU deforestation and the importance of traceability, just curious about what you're thinking on how you provide that level of data to brands who are now going to have a lot more, things like over 4 hectares, they now have to be able to like substantiate a lot of data. So just curious about what you're thinking from like a biodiversity and deforestation perspective and what they're doing.
Right, you'll get jump in first.
Yeah.
So, I guess an update on, so our strategy, to raise and deploy this 250 million is gonna involve multiple different types of partners and different types of asset classes that can come in just to be catalytic. And so, as Jennifer said, some of that's private sector, some of it can be public, but, we're bringing brands in through both their philanthropy and their supply chain improvement budget. So it's, potentially, looking at separating out the use of those funds, so not self-dealing, obviously. So AI has, grant making dollars that can come from philanthropy towards certain types of activities, and then we're recruiting a supplier and subsidizing them, getting them into that. So everyone who's working with AI on a project is actually all part of this. It's not just the lead partners of the fund. So we're currently on target to deploy about 100 million by 2030 if we just stay the course, but we don't think staying the course is going to get us there, and our ambitions to 250 million analytics. So continuing to bridge those conversations with philanthropy outside of this sector. It's also to get them to understand that a lot of the grant making and investment that they're doing already in food and ag or industrial heat or renewable energy in these countries is also aligned to the work that we're doing. And so it's a lot of education that we've been doing with like the Rockefellers and the Schmitz who who've been funding us through this to help them understand, like, these are a lot of the same types of things that you're trying to solve for, just in other industries and sectors. And so that's on the philanthropic. And then I would say on the bank side and debt financing, we're having some really positive and active conversations with banks. On Friday, we're gonna dig in a little bit more around that work with several different banks at the table with brands to kind of really try to launch some particular tools. We mentioned Guidehouse as one of the partners that, you know, we talked with brands about working with, but there's other initiatives that are out there that we feel like need to also be sort of brought into landscapes. We talk about like these technology solutions and facilities need to have clarity and bring into scope, but also like what types of partners are out there, from banks to development banks to, you know, other forms of concessionary finance participants, philanthropists that are interested in this as well. And that's the other piece of the philanthropy is also getting philanthropy to see the role that they can play or it can play in debt financing as well too, to secure loans, provide first loss tranche or funds towards that. And so that's the other conversation that we're having as well. So I'd say it's moving forward, our ambition, you know, to unlock another one. Well, I mentioned the 2 billion, but of that 1.2 billion would be debt financing is active. It's that, you know.
Just curious what the
Yeah.
what their reception's been like right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're very encouraged about it. I know, Brian, if you've been really focused on that, I don't know if you want to say anything else about like where we are right now. We've got a couple of MOUs out there, and that's all I can say.
Yeah, it's
It'll be the land.
Putting the door on you, I guess. Thanks.
They want to lend money. I think so. The thing is they're ready to lend.
They're ready, and that's what I.
But yeah, Brian, go ahead and make a comment. Yeah.
No, I think the key thing is the missing the de-risking mechanisms. So the banks aren't willing to do it on their own. And so whether it's philanthropic or brand participation or guarantees, and so it's more complicated than the plain vanilla loan, and that's what makes it a little bit slower. But the banks are very, very interested in the opportunity.
And one thing that we're exploring, I don't know, Brian may say like, you know, don't say too much, just, but you know, is what role could an organization like AII play in sort of standardizing that, the data and information that needs to get to the bank? So the cost just to do the underwriting to kind of like to get to the place where you actually might consider giving a loan is a considerable cost that is carried at a bank's like, it's not a certain level of investment. I don't even want to touch it. It's not worth my time. So getting that lowered means having an intermediary or some kind of standardized way in which we're taking that data and distributing it to the right suite of partners. It could be part of stacking asset classes, right? It may not be one bank or two banks or three. It might be different forms of capital coming from different organizations. And so that's something that we're looking at. Like, would that be something to help lower the cost of, you know, taking on these loans as well too? So there's a lot of different things that can be done. And this is the time to get a little bit more innovative, like what's working, what's happening now is working with banks. And so it's not working with spotting.
Yeah, so deforestation, yeah, I didn't mention that because Breton is less prone to that, but I mean, we of course, we source soil, we source corn and so on. And then so there, of course, if you look at an emission factor, then the land use change for this is quite significant for these crops. And so we do have a commitment by 2025 of deforestation, local level by ecosystems, the cutoff date of 2020. So we're working on this, quite extensively, and that requires, of course, big, huge effort in terms of facility. The way we transfer this to our customers, I guess, we need to look at direct sourcing and the exact, the exact sourcing we have in different countries. What we can do is aggregate this in a form of emission factor with a lower share of land use change, so that's typically how we would transfer information. I think this could be verified. Correctly, but yeah, so this is how to be looking.
There was a question.
Yeah, Sally plus Nutrient Ag Solutions. So my job is to design programs that take to growers to lower their emissions in the field. So just curious where you guys talked a lot about the after the cotton is grown processes and how that's impacting your scope 3 and solutions you're looking at financing. How does that grower solution come into these, the apparel, the fashion private fund, are there opportunities for us to partner there? Are there opportunities on reporting on the growers that we have contact with in the field across the US and Australia?
That's excellent. Yeah, I'll just jump in quick and then. So, yeah, I said yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, we released the first 5 awardees of the Fashion Climate Fund. And one of them is focused on cotton production, and particularly looking at technologies around lowering fertilizer use. So you probably know 10 other things that would be compelling that should be in the climate solutions portfolio. And so as we do a next call out, making sure that we're reaching the right partners who are actually focused on this area is important. We've been working with Textile Exchange as a strategic collaborator to us. We're also, know the folks at BCI and others, but I think we're only as good as the input we're getting to, because that's not where our traditional expertise has been. So I was happy to see, because I was not part of the committee that reviewed and voted, but members of our team were managing that with third-party experts. And so I was really glad to see that there was, one of the 5 is, and it's an earlier stage innovation. As I said earlier, like typically we want to find things that are scale ready, but if something has real potential for big impact on lowering CO2 emission, then we can potentially do grant making earlier stage as well too, particularly if there aren't others that are already funding it in grant, or we can go in and match it, or we can kind of bring it in. So I'd love to get your information. So we can talk about what types of things you all might be working on or aware of for your networking. Yeah. You want to add to that?
It was a plus one to that. We also found out different regenerative project, but that was one of the things when we decided to partner up with AI to see in what field, in what areas do they think that investment and grant can go, and that is one of the pieces of funds.
And as we grow the fund, there will be more grants we can make, right? So it's like, that we want to populate this thing, and obviously the companies that we work with have a front row seat to things they may have piloted or have reviewed and passed on, or maybe they passed on it 3 years ago, but now it's compelling again. And so this is where I think creating this sort of network through convening and collaboration at AI helps to kind of say, let's not let things stay in pilot phase, locked away under NDAs, quietness. Let's start to review what we're going to do. Start to evaluate that against this core set of criteria for CO2 reduction. Obviously, we're really focusing on making sure that this can be verified.
Well, thank you very much. So just the last lightning round, the conclusions, we have the work from everybody. So,
Well, I just had the last one, so we should start off with.
Yes, we'll work together. Yeah, as I said, we definitely need to, the reason for being here is to engage in the dialogue with customers and users. And so there's definitely a need for, collaboration. Yeah, so we're ready to play our role.
Ulrika.
What we had discussed with co-claiming and to find accounting guidelines that allow for the investor to actually get their return on investment, which is the emission reduction.
Lewis.
Yeah, I would say, there's such a great opportunity for all players to kind of come together under this. And I like the point that you made, Jennifer, which is not every company is going to come in and put a lot of philanthropic into necessarily a model like ours, but in an ideal world, you don't even need brand dollars because the factories are just incentivized to do this right away. And so I think what we're trying to do is bridge that gap, recognizing that catalytic dollars may be a period of time where we need that now to start to really demonstrate this is what's working, let's get it out there, and then let the, debt and equity investors take over from that. So I think there's, the Band-Aid of, I would call philanthropy can be somewhat of a Band-Aid because it's subsidy, right? That's not going to be in this phase, this transition that we're talking about isn't going to need that forever. But recognizing that as we start to also bring down the cost of carbon, the cost of these projects and investments against this growing timeline, there is this opportunity where philanthropy helps fill the delta as we also go, well, it works, and now they're incentivized, and there's enough of a tipping point and enough, package deals that have been successful with the banks that this is can be replicated, right? And I think that's kind of where we're looking at this moment of why we need you know, who's got the dollars and are most incentivized to put that catalytic funding in now versus later.
Role and also the audience for this panel. And for me, if you allow me, I just want to also have a bit of a conclusion. This is all about collaborations. So also for me, what I would like of my dream is that next year in Climate Week, this breakout has the biggest this room. So this is, let's walk the talk, and thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
So we get a picture of the panel, do you want to take? Yeah. You know, our marketing social media team today.